The chains were cold against his wrists. Commander Daniel Hayes stood in the center of the Great Hall, surrounded by thousands of alien soldiers. The Velthari were tall creatures with hard shells like insects. They had 6 limbs and eyes that looked like black gems. When they moved, their bodies made clicking sounds that echoed through the massive room. Daniel did not move. He did not speak. He simply stood there, looking straight ahead, his face showing nothing at all. The great hall of the Velthari mothership was bigger than any building Daniel had ever seen on Earth. The walls were made of something that looked like black glass. Strange lights floated near the ceiling, casting purple and blue shadows across everything. The floor was smooth and cold under his boots. Around him, the Velthari soldiers watched with their strange eyes. They clicked their mandibles together, making sounds that Daniel knew was laughter. To them, he was nothing but a weak creature from a weak planet. To them, humans were just another species to conquer. At the far end of the hall, there was a throne made of crystals that glowed with inner light. And on that throne sat Queen Sereth, ruler of the Velthari Dominion. She was larger than the others, nearly 3 meters tall when she stood. Her shell was darker, almost purple in some light. Golden marks decorated her body, signs of her royal blood. When she looked at Daniel, her many eyes reflected his image back at him 100 times. The queen rose from her throne and began to walk toward him. Her 6 legs moved smoothly across the floor, making soft tapping sounds. The soldiers parted to let her pass, bowing their heads as she went by. She stopped directly in front of Daniel and looked down at him. A human was small compared to a Velthari. Daniel barely reached her chest. "So this is what humanity sends me," she said. Her voice came through the translator chip that had been forced into Daniel's skull when he was captured. It made her words sound almost human, but there was something cold underneath them. A silent man in chains. Daniel said nothing. His eyes met hers, but his lips stayed closed. The queen circled around him slowly, studying him from every angle. "I asked for a negotiator. I asked for someone with authority. And your people send me a man who will not even speak." She made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. "Is this meant to insult me? Or are humans simply too stupid to understand what I asked for?" Still, Daniel remained silent. His heart beat steady in his chest. His breathing was calm. He had trained for many years to control his body and his emotions. Nothing this alien queen said would change that. Behind him, held by Velthari guards, were his 2 crew members. Lieutenant Amy Porter was a young woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. She had been his second in command for 3 years. Beside her stood Ensign Kyle Brennan, barely 22 years old, with fear written clearly on his face. They had been captured together when their scout ship, the Horizon's Edge, was ambushed near the border colonies. The Velthari had come out of nowhere, their weapons tearing through the small human vessel like paper. Daniel had ordered his crew to surrender only when he realized they had no chance of escape. Now they stood in chains, prisoners of an empire that had already destroyed dozens of human worlds. "Perhaps he is damaged," one of the Velthari generals said. His name was Korthax, and he was larger than most of the soldiers. Scars covered his shell from many battles. Perhaps the capture broke his mind. Queen Sereth tilted her head, considering this. "Is that it, human? Has your mind broken? Are you so fragile that a little captivity has stolen your voice?" Daniel looked at her calmly. He could speak. His voice worked perfectly fine, but he chose not to use it. He had not spoken a single word in 5 years, not since the day his daughter died. The Queen did not know this. She did not know about the attack on Earth's orbital stations, where thousands of humans had died in fire and vacuum. She did not know about a little girl named Lily, who had been only 7 years old when the Velthari bombs found her. She did not know that Daniel had held his daughter's hand in the hospital as she took her last breath. She did not know about the promise he made in her grave, a promise to carry humanity's answer to the stars. The Queen saw only a silent man. She thought silence meant weakness. She was wrong. "This is disappointing," Queen Sarah said, returning to her throne. She sat down and waved one of her limbs dismissively. "I had hoped for entertainment. I had hoped to hear a human beg for mercy, to watch one of your kind grovel before true power. Instead, I get this empty shell." She looked at her generals. "Perhaps we should try the female. Humans seem to value their females. Maybe she will be more entertaining." Amy's eyes widened, but she stood straight and did not show fear. She had learned from Daniel. She had learned that strength was not about muscles or weapons. It was about the fire inside your heart. "Take them to the cells," the Queen ordered. "Let them sit in darkness for a few days. Perhaps hunger and fear will loosen the commander's tongue." The guards grabbed Daniel's chains and began to drag him away. As he walked, he kept his eyes forward. He did not look back at the Queen. He did not look at the thousands of soldiers who watched him go. But inside his mind, he was counting the steps from the throne room to the exit, counting the guards along the way, counting the doors and corridors and turns. He was also thinking about what flowed through his blood. The nanomachines were there, billions of tiny machines smaller than blood cells. They had been sleeping since the day they were injected into his veins. They were waiting for the right moment to wake up. Project Prometheus, the humans called it. Their secret answer to an enemy they could not defeat with ships and guns. Daniel had volunteered for it the day after his daughter's funeral. He had been selected because he had nothing left to lose. The guards threw him into a dark cell and slammed the door behind him. Daniel stood in the blackness and waited. He was patient. He had been patient for 5 years. Queen Sarah thought she had captured a broken man. She thought his silence was a sign of defeat. She would learn the truth soon enough. Humanity did not send a negotiator. Humanity sent a weapon. And that weapon was wrapped in silent sorrow and a father's unbreaking love. In the darkness of his cell, Daniel allowed himself a small smile. The first part of his mission was complete. He was inside the enemy's ship, close to their queen. Now he just needed to get closer. The Valkyrie had no idea what was coming. They looked at humans and saw small creatures with soft bodies and short lives. They did not see the fire that burned inside human hearts. They did not understand that humans were most dangerous when they had lost everything. Daniel Hayes had lost everything. And he had come to make the Valkyrie understand exactly what that meant. He sat down in the corner of his cell, closed his eyes, and began to wait. In the cells nearby, he knew Amy and Kyle were doing the same. They trusted him. They believed in the mission. They would follow him into the heart of hell if he asked them to. Tomorrow, the Queen would try again to make him speak. She would mock him and threaten him and try to break him. And tomorrow, Daniel would remain silent. But soon, very soon, his silence would end. And when it did, the Valkyrie would hear a message they would never forget. Humanity remembers. Humanity answers. 3 days passed in the darkness of the Valkyrie prison cells. Daniel had counted every hour by the rhythm of the guard patrols outside his door. He had learned their patterns, memorized their timing, and stored every piece of information in his mind. The cell was small and cold. There was no bed, no chair, nothing but smooth black walls and the floor that seemed to drain warmth from his body. They gave him water twice a day and something that looked like gray paste for food. It tasted like nothing, but it kept him alive. That was all that mattered. On the morning of the 4th day, the guards came for him again. They dragged him through long corridors filled with purple light. Valkyrie soldiers stopped to watch as he passed, their mandibles clicking with that strange laughter. Daniel kept his face empty and his eyes forward. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him struggle. The throne room was even more crowded than before. It seemed like the queen had invited the entire ship to watch her play with her human toy. Thousands of aliens stood in neat rows, their black eyes fixed on Daniel as the guards threw him to the floor before the throne. Queen Sereth looked down at him with something like amusement in her alien face. "The Silent One returns," she announced to her court. "I hope the darkness helped him find his voice." Daniel pushed himself up from the floor and stood straight. His chains rattled as he moved, but he did not let them slow him down. He met the queen's eyes without flinching. Sereth descended from her throne, moving with that smooth, predatory grace that made her look like a hunting animal. She circled around Daniel slowly, running one clawed limb along his shoulder. "Your species confuses me," she said, loud enough for the whole court to hear. "You are so small, so soft, so easy to break. Yet you spread across the galaxy like insects. You build colonies on worlds that should kill you. You fight wars you cannot win." She stopped in front of him and leaned down until her face was close to his. "And when I capture one of your commanders, he refuses to speak. Why is that, human? What makes you think your silence matters?" Daniel looked at her calmly. In his mind, he saw his daughter's face. He remembered her laugh, her smile, the way she used to run to him when he came home from long missions. He held on to that memory like a shield. The queen straightened up and turned to her court. "I have studied humans," she announced. "I have read their histories, their stories, their communications. They are a species that never stops talking. They argue, they sing, they shout, they cry. Communication is everything to them." She pointed at Daniel. "So when a human chooses silence, it means something is broken inside them. Their spirit has shattered. They have given up." The court clicked and hissed with approval. They believed their queen. They saw what she wanted them to see, a defeated enemy, proof that humans were nothing to fear. But across the room, being held by guards near the wall, Amy Porter knew the truth. She had served with Daniel for 3 years. She had seen him lead men into battle against impossible odds. She had watched him hold together a crew when their ship was burning around them. Commander Daniel Hayes was not broken. He had simply chosen a different kind of strength. The silence had started 5 years ago, on the worst day of Daniel's life. Amy knew the story because Kyle had told her, having heard it from older officers who had served with Daniel before. Daniel's wife, Maria, had died giving birth to their daughter, Lily. From that moment on, Lily became everything to him. He raised her alone, taking her with him on safe missions when he could, leaving her with trusted family when he could not. She was his light, his reason for fighting, his hope for the future. When the Velthari first attacked humanity, their bombs hit the orbital stations above Earth. Thousands died in seconds. Lily was visiting relatives on Station 7 when the attack came. Daniel had been on patrol duty, 3 systems away. By the time he reached Earth, Lily was already in the hospital. The radiation from the Velthari weapons had poisoned her small body. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. Daniel had sat beside her bed for 6 days, holding her hand and whispering stories to her until she closed her eyes for the last time. After the funeral, he never spoke again. Not to friends, not to commanders, not to anyone. Some thought he had lost his mind. Others thought he was just broken by grief. But a few understood. Admiral Carolyn Webb, the head of Earth's Defense Forces, saw something in Daniel's eyes that made her offer him a choice. Project Prometheus was humanity's secret weapon. Scientists had developed nanomachines that could interface with alien technology. Machines so small they could hide in a person's blood and wait for years without being detected. When activated, they could connect to any electronic system and deliver a payload directly into an enemy's network. The problem was that the nanomachines needed a living host. Someone had to carry them into the heart of enemy territory. Someone had to get close enough to the Veltari command structure to make the connection. Daniel volunteered immediately. He had nothing left to lose and everything to give. The doctors had injected the nanomachines into his blood 3 years ago. Since then, he had been waiting for the right mission, the right opportunity. When Earth received the Queen's demand for a negotiator, Daniel knew his moment had come. Now he stood in chains before the alien Queen, and she had no idea what flowed through his veins. Queen Sareth returned to her throne and looked down at him with contempt. "I am growing tired of this game," she said. "Perhaps I need to give you motivation to speak." She gestured to the guards, and they dragged Amy forward. The young lieutenant struggled against their grip, but she was no match for Velthari's strength. "This female seems important to you," the Queen said. "She watches you with loyalty in her eyes. Perhaps if I hurt her, you will find your voice." One of the guards raised a weapon that crackled with blue energy. Amy's face went pale, but she did not cry out. She looked at Daniel and gave him a small nod, telling him without words that she trusted him. Daniel's heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. He knew what the Queen was doing. She was testing him, looking for weakness. If he showed any reaction, she would use it against him. "No response?" the Queen asked, sounding disappointed. "Your female suffers, and you do not even blink?" She waved her limb, and the guard lowered his weapon. "Interesting. Perhaps you truly are empty inside." She ordered Amy taken back to her cell, then turned her attention back to Daniel. "Tomorrow I will try something different. I will bring you to my private chambers, away from the court. There, we will have a real conversation, you and I." Her eyes gleamed with cruel anticipation. "I will find what breaks you, human. Everyone breaks eventually. It is simply a matter of finding the right pressure point." The guards dragged Daniel back to his cell and threw him inside. The door slammed shut, leaving him in darkness once again. Daniel sat in the corner and allowed himself to feel relief. Amy was safe for now. The Queen was curious about him, which meant she would keep him close. And tomorrow, she would bring him to her private chambers. That was exactly what he needed. The Queen's private chambers would be connected to her personal neural network, the same network that linked her to every ship and soldier in the Velthari fleet. Once Daniel was close enough, the nanomachines in his blood could make the connection dot in the darkness of his cell. Daniel closed his eyes and thought about his daughter. He remembered carrying her on his shoulders when she was small. He remembered teaching her to read, watching her learn to ride a bicycle, listening to her laugh at silly jokes. "Soon, Lily," he whispered in his mind, the only place he allowed himself to speak. "Soon they will understand what they took from us. Soon they will know what humanity carries in its heart." The nanomachines in his blood hummed quietly, waiting for their moment. Daniel waited with them, patient as stone, silent as grief. Tomorrow, everything would change. The Queen's private chambers were nothing like Daniel had expected. Instead of cold black walls, this room was filled with soft light and strange plants that grew from crystal pots. Delicate fabrics hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered with something that felt almost like carpet dot. It was beautiful in an alien way, and Daniel understood immediately what it meant. This was where Queen Sareth allowed herself to be something other than a warrior. This was her sanctuary. 2 guards had brought him here an hour after the ship's lights had dimmed for the night cycle. They removed his chains at the door, leaving red marks on his wrists, then positioned themselves outside. The message was clear. He was trapped here until the Queen decided otherwise. Sarah stood by a window that looked out into space. Stars stretched endlessly in the darkness, and somewhere out there, Daniel knew, Earth was spinning in its orbit around the sun. His home was millions of kilometers away, but it had never felt closer. "I have dismissed my court," the Queen said without turning around. "No generals, no soldiers, no audience. Just you and me, human. She turned to face him, and Daniel saw something different in her eyes. The cruel amusement was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity. I find you fascinating. In all my years of conquest, I have never encountered a creature quite like you. Daniel stood in the center of the room and watched her carefully. The nanomachines in his blood were already scanning the environment, searching for electronic signals. He could feel them humming softly, getting closer to their target. The queen moved to a low table and poured 2 glasses of glowing liquid. She offered one to Daniel, but he did not take it. Not thirsty? She asked. It is not poison, if that concerns you. I want to understand you, not kill you. She set the glass down and moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the detailed patterns on her shell. I have accessed your ship's records, she said. I know who you are, Commander Daniel Hayes. I know about your service record, your battles, your victories. She paused, studying his face for any reaction. I also know about your daughter. For a moment, Daniel felt his heart freeze. Of all the things he had prepared for, hearing this alien speak about Lily was not one of them. She died in our first attack on Earth, the Queen continued. A small child, 7 years old. Caught in the bombing of Orbital Station 7. She tilted her head, watching him carefully. That is when you stopped speaking, yes? When the child died. Daniel kept his face still, but inside him storms were raging. Memories flooded through his mind, sharper than any blade. Lily's laugh. Lily's tears. Lily's small hand going cold in his grip. I have seen this before in other species, Sarah said. Grief that consumes everything. Pain that destroys the ability to communicate. She reached out and touched his face with one clawed limb, forcing him to look at her. Is that what happened to you? Did losing your child break something inside? Daniel looked into her alien eyes and saw nothing but cold curiosity. She was not asking because she cared. She was asking because she wanted to understand her enemy's weakness, but she did not understand. She could not understand. The Velthari did not love the way humans loved. They reproduced through chemical processes, growing their young in organic vats without any parent-child bond. The concept of a father's love was completely foreign to them. That was why humanity had chosen this weapon. That was why Daniel was here. Perhaps if you speak, the Queen said softly, I will let your crew go free. The female Amy, the young male Kyle, they are not important to me. I only want to understand you. Daniel felt the nanomachine surge in his blood. They had found what they were looking for, a neural implant in the Queen's skull, the same type of implant that every Velthari wore. It was connected to the hive mind network, the system that allowed the Queen to communicate instantly with every soldier in her fleet. All he needed was physical contact. Prolonged contact, skin to skin, so the nanomachines could transfer through his pores and into her system. The Queen still had her claw on his face. One word, she whispered. Give me one word, and I will show mercy. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since he had been captured, he let emotion show on his face. Not fear, not desperation. Something else entirely. He smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of his lips. But the Queen saw it, and something flickered in her eyes. Confusion, perhaps. Or the first tiny seed of fear. What are you smiling about? She demanded. What is amusing about your situation? Daniel did not answer with words. Instead, he did something she never expected. He reached up and placed his hand over hers, pressing her claw more firmly against his face. The Queen froze. In her entire existence, no prisoner had ever touched her willingly. No enemy had ever sought her contact instead of fleeing from it. What are you doing? She asked, her voice losing some of its confidence. Inside Daniel's body, the nanomachines exploded into action. They poured through his skin, invisible and silent, flowing into the Queen's body through the point where their flesh touched. Billions of tiny machines, carrying billions of tiny memories. Sareth's eyes went wide. She tried to pull back, but something was wrong. Her limbs would not obey her commands. Her thoughts were scattering like leaves in a storm. "What is this?" she screamed. "What have you done to me?" Daniel finally lowered his hand and stepped back. The transfer was complete. The nanomachines were inside her now, spreading through her neural implant, using her connection to reach every Valkyrie in the fleet. The Queen fell to her knees, clutching her head. Strange sounds came from her throat, sounds of pain and confusion. Her entire body shook as the nanomachines did their work. "Stop it," she begged. "Whatever you are doing, stop it." But Daniel could not stop it even if he wanted to. The process was automatic, designed to be unstoppable once it began. The nanomachines were not just delivering data. They were delivering something far more powerful, but they were delivering human. Memory.images began to flood through the Queen's mind. Not information, not strategies, not tactical data. Something much more personal. She saw Daniel's daughter Lily taking her first steps across a kitchen floor. She felt the pride and joy that had filled Daniel's heart in that moment. She experienced the overwhelming love that a father feels for his child. Love that the Valkyrie had no words for because they had never known it. Then the memory shifted. She saw Lily growing up, saw her laughing and crying and learning and living. She experienced years of bedtime stories and birthday parties and small moments of perfect happiness. And then she experienced the attack. She felt Daniel's terror when he heard the news. She lived through his desperate race back to Earth, the endless hours of waiting, the crushing despair when he reached the hospital. She held Lily's hand as the little girl's breathing grew weaker. She felt the exact moment when the child's heart stopped beating, and she felt the grief that came after. The grief that had silenced Daniel Hayes for 5 years. The grief that burned like a star inside his chest, never fading, never dimming. The Queen screamed. It was not a sound of physical pain. It was the sound of a creature experiencing human emotion for the first time. Emotion that was too big and too powerful for her alien mind to process. "Make it stop," she sobbed, clutching at Daniel's legs. "I cannot bear it. It is too much. It is too much." But this was only the beginning. Through her neural implant, the memories were spreading. Every Valkyrie soldier on the ship was receiving them. Every ship in the fleet was receiving them. The hive mind that had been their greatest strength was becoming their greatest weakness. Across the mothership, aliens collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by emotions they had never felt before. Warriors who had killed thousands without remorse were suddenly drowning in the grief of their victims. Generals who had ordered the destruction of human colonies were experiencing every death, every loss, every broken heart. Daniel stood in the center of the chaos and watched. He felt no satisfaction. He felt no revenge. He only felt the same quiet sorrow that had lived inside him for 5 years. The Queen looked up at him with eyes that were no longer cold. For the first time, she truly saw him. Not as an enemy, not as a prisoner, not as a toy. She saw him as a father who had lost his child and carried that loss across the stars. "We did not know," she whispered. "We did not understand. We thought you were just animals." Daniel knelt down beside her and looked into her alien face. When he spoke, his voice was rough from years of silence. It cracked and wavered, but the words came out clear. "Now you know?" The Queen bowed her head and wept. And across the fleet, her soldiers wept with her. The chaos spread through the faltering mothership like fire through dry wood. In every corridor, in every chamber, in every corner of the massive vessel, aliens were falling to their knees. Warriors dropped their weapons. Officers stumbled away from their stations. The ship itself seemed to groan as systems went unattended and crew members collapsed where they stood. Amy Porter heard the screaming start from inside her cell. At first, she thought the Valkyrie were attacking each other, some kind of internal conflict. But the sounds were wrong. These were not sounds of battle. They were sounds of pain, of confusion, of something breaking inside alien minds. The door to her cell suddenly opened. A Valkyrie guard stood in the entrance, but he was not looking at her. His compound eyes were unfocused, and his mandibles trembled violently. Strange clicking sounds came from his throat, sounds that the translator in Amy's skull turned into words. "The children," he moaned. "So many children. We killed so many children." Then he fell forward and lay still on the floor, his body shaking with silent sobs. Amy did not wait to understand what was happening. She stepped over the fallen guard and ran into the corridor. All around her, Valkyrie soldiers were lying on the ground or leaning against walls, their bodies twitching, their voices making sound she had never heard from them before. She had to find Kyle. She had to find the commander. Kyle's cell was 3 doors down from hers. She found him already free, standing in his doorway with wide eyes as he watched the chaos around them. "Amy," he said, grabbing her arm. "What is happening? What is wrong with them?" "I do not know," she admitted. "But I think the commander did something. We need to find him." They ran through the ship, navigating by memory and instinct. Every corridor was the same. Valkyrie everywhere, fallen and weeping, some of them reaching out toward the humans with trembling limbs. One of them grabbed Amy's leg as she passed. It was a young soldier, smaller than the others, probably not fully grown. His eyes fixed on her face with something that looked like desperate need. "Forgive us," he whispered. "We did not know. We thought you felt nothing. We thought you were just prey." Amy pulled her leg free and kept running. She did not have time for forgiveness. She needed to find Daniel Dodd. They reached the Queen's private chambers and found the door standing open. Inside, the room was dark, except for the starlight streaming through the windows. Daniel stood in the center of the space, looking down at something on the floor. It was Queen Sereth. The ruler of the Valkyrie Dominion lay curled on her side like a wounded animal. Her body shook with each breath. Her eyes stared at nothing. "Commander," Amy said, stepping into the room. "Sir, what happened? What did you do?" Daniel turned to face her, and Amy saw something she had never seen before. He was crying. Tears ran down his weathered face, but he was smiling at the same time. "I showed them," he said. His voice was rough and strange after 5 years of silence, but Amy had never heard anything more beautiful. "I showed them what they took from us." He explained it quickly, his words becoming stronger with each sentence. The nanomachines, the memory transfer, the truth that humanity had encoded into his blood and sent across the stars. Amy listened with growing understanding. Project Prometheus was not a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of truth. Instead of killing the Valkyrie, humanity had forced them to feel. The hive mind connected every soldier to their queen, Daniel said. When the nanomachines reached her neural implant, they used that connection to spread. Now every Valkyrie in the fleet is experiencing human memories. My memories. The memories of everyone who lost someone in their attacks. Kyle stepped forward, his young face pale. "All of them? Every soldier on every ship?" Daniel nodded. "Every single one. They are feeling what we feel. They are knowing what we know." He looked down at the Queen, who was slowly beginning to stir. "They are understanding what they did to us." General Korthax appeared in the doorway. The massive warrior was barely able to stand. His scarred shell seemed to have lost its shine, and his eyes were wet with something that looked like tears. "Commander Hayes," he said, his voice broken and weak. "I have served my queen for 60 years. I have led armies across 100 worlds. I have killed more enemies than I can count." He fell to his knees before Daniel, his head bowed low. "I never knew. In all those battles, all those conquests, I never once considered that our enemies might feel loss. I thought they were just obstacles, just things in our way." He looked up at Daniel with eyes full of a new and terrible understanding. "But you are not things. You are people. You love your children the way we love nothing. You carry your dead in your hearts forever." The queen pushed herself up from the floor. She moved slowly, like someone waking from a long and terrible nightmare. When she looked at Daniel, there was no hatred in her eyes. There was only exhaustion and something that might have been respect. "Your species is more dangerous than we ever imagined," she said softly. "Not because of your weapons or your ships. Because of this." She pressed one limb against her chest, where a Vulturi heart would be. "You carry fire inside you. Fire that we cannot fight." Daniel helped her to her feet. It was a strange sight, the human prisoner assisting the alien queen who had mocked him just days ago. But everything had changed now. The old rules no longer applied. "What will you do now?" Sereth asked. "Your mission is complete. You have defeated us without firing a single shot." Daniel thought about the question carefully. He had come here prepared to die. He had expected the nanomachines to kill him along with the enemy. But he was still alive, and now he had choices to make. "I want to go home," he said finally. "I want to take my crew and return to Earth, and I want you to come with us." The queen's eyes widened. "You want me to go to Earth? To the world I tried to destroy?" "Yes." Daniel's voice was firm. "The war is not over just because your fleet felt our pain. There will be others who did not receive the memories. There will be Vulturi who want revenge. If we are going to end this war, truly end it, we need to work together." Sereth was silent for a long moment. Around her, she could still feel the echoes of human memory in her mind. The love, the loss, the grief that burned like stars. She knew that she would carry these memories forever, that they would change everything she did from this day forward. "You asked me to help the species I was trying to conquer," she said. "I asked you to help the species you finally understand." Daniel replied. The queen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had shifted in her expression. The cold ruler was gone, replaced by something more complex, more troubled, more human. "Very well," she said. "I will go with you to Earth. I will speak to your leaders. I will tell them what I have learned." She looked around at her fallen soldiers, at the general kneeling on the floor, at the chaos that had consumed her ship. "Perhaps together we can build something better than what we destroyed." Daniel nodded and turned to Amy and Kyle. "Can you find us a shuttle? We need to get a message to Earth." Amy saluted, old habits returning even in this strange new situation. "Yes, sir. We will have a shuttle ready within the hour." As she and Kyle hurried away, Daniel stood beside the alien queen and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, his daughter was waiting for him. Not in body, but in memory. In the love that he carried with him everywhere. "I have a question," Sarah said quietly. "The memories I received, the grief and the love, will they fade with time?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, they never fade. You learn to live with them, to carry them, to let them shape you without destroying you. But they never go away." The queen nodded, accepting this truth. "Then I will learn. As you learned. As all humans learn." She turned to face him directly. "I mocked your silence. I thought it meant weakness. But I understand now. Your silence was full of everything that matters most. Love and loss and memory and hope." Daniel met her alien eyes and saw his own grief reflected there. They were enemies who had become something stranger and more complicated. Not friends, not allies, but two beings who finally understood each other. "The war is not over," he said. "But maybe, just maybe, this is how it ends." Sareth nodded slowly. "With truth instead of weapons. With understanding instead of destruction. With silence," Daniel said softly, "that finally speaks." The journey back to Earth took 14 days. The Valkyrie shuttle was faster than any human ship, cutting through space at speeds that made Daniel's head spin when he thought about them too long. But the physical journey was nothing compared to what was happening in the hearts and minds of everyone on board. Queen Sarah spent most of the trip in silence, staring out the windows at the passing stars. The memories that Daniel had given her were still alive in her mind, playing over and over like songs she could not stop hearing. She saw human children laughing in playgrounds. She felt mothers holding their babies for the first time. She experienced the deep and terrible grief of funerals, of empty chairs at dinner tables, of photographs that were all that remained of loved ones. General Korthax had insisted on coming with them. He said he needed to stand before the humans and confess what he had done. 60 years of warfare, of ordering attacks, of watching human worlds burn. He could not undo any of it, but he could bear witness. He could tell the truth. Amy and Kyle took turns piloting the shuttle, learning the alien controls through trial and error. They were young and adaptable, and the Valkyrie systems were not so different from human ones once you understood the basic principles. Every few hours, one of them would check on Daniel, making sure he was eating, making sure he was sleeping, making sure he was okay. Daniel appreciated their concern, but he did not need it. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than grief. He felt hope. When Earth finally appeared on the shuttle screens, everyone stopped what they were doing to look. The blue and green planet hung in the darkness of space like a precious gem. White clouds swirled across its surface, and tiny lights glittered on the night side where cities still stood despite everything the Valkyrie had done to them. "It is beautiful," Queen Sarah said softly. "I never saw it this way before. I only saw it as a target, as a prize to be conquered." "It is home," Daniel replied. "Everything we are, everything we feel, it all comes from that small bowl of rock and water." The shuttle was met by a fleet of human warships as soon as it entered Earth's orbit. Admiral Caroline Webb, the same woman who had recruited Daniel for Project Prometheus, personally commanded the lead vessel. Her voice crackled over the communication system, hard and suspicious. "Commander Hayes, you have a Valkyrie shuttle and you are carrying the enemy queen. Explain your situation immediately." Daniel moved to the communication panel and pressed the transmit button. "Admiral Webb, this is Commander Hayes. The mission was successful. The nanomachines worked exactly as designed. Queen Sareth and General Korthax are here as witnesses. They want to negotiate peace." There was a long silence. Daniel could imagine the chaos on the human ships, officers shouting, weapons being readied, debates erupting about whether this was a trap. Finally, the Admiral's voice returned. "You have permission to dock at Station 3. Full security protocols will be in effect. Any hostile action from your passengers will be met with immediate force." "Understood, Admiral. We will comply with all protocols." The docking process took another 2 hours. Security teams surrounded the shuttle bay. Soldiers with weapons watched every movement as Daniel led the small group out of the alien vessel and onto human ground. Admiral Webb was waiting for them, a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had seen too many battles, lost too many friends. She looked at Queen Sareth with barely contained hatred. "Your kind killed my son," she said, her voice like ice. "He was 23 years old. He wanted to be a teacher. Your bombs found him on his first day of military service." Sareth bowed her head. The gesture was awkward, clearly not natural for a Valkyrie, but the meaning was clear. "I cannot undo what has been done. I can only tell you that I now understand the weight of it. She looked up at the Admiral with eyes that had changed. They were no longer cold or proud. They were tired and sad and full of something that looked almost like human grief. "I have felt your son's death," Sarah said. "Not the death itself, but the love that was lost when he died. The pride you felt when he was born. The hopes you had for his future. The emptiness that filled your heart when the news came." The Admiral's face flickered with surprise and something deeper. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because Commander Hayes showed me. Not just your son. Thousands of sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and lovers. Every human who died because of my orders. I now carry them inside me." She pressed her limb against her chest. "I will carry them forever. That is my punishment and my transformation." The Admiral looked at Daniel, who nodded slowly. "It is true, Admiral. The nanomachines did not just disable the Valkyrie. They made them understand. Every soldier in the fleet now knows exactly what they did to us." Negotiations began that same day. They were not easy. There was too much anger, too much pain, too many memories on both sides. Human representatives wanted punishment. They wanted the Valkyrie to pay for every life they had taken. But Queen Sereth did something that no one expected. She offered something that went beyond reparations or territory or political concessions. She offered to share. "Let my people carry your memories," she said to the Council of Human Leaders. "Not through weapons or war, but through choice. Let those who are willing receive the same gift that your commander gave to me." She looked around the room, meeting human eyes with her alien gaze. "And in return, let us share our memories with you. Let your people understand who we are, what shaped us, why we became what we became. Perhaps if we truly know each other, we can truly live in peace." The debate lasted for weeks. Some humans refused absolutely. They did not want peace with the aliens who had killed their families. They wanted revenge, wanted the Valkyrie destroyed completely, but others saw the possibility. Daniel spoke to them in meetings that went late into the night, his voice growing stronger each day. He told them about his daughter, about his silence, about the choice he had made to carry truth instead of weapons. "Revenge would be easy," he said. "I have dreamed about it every night for 5 years. I have imagined making them suffer the way I suffered. But that would not bring Lily back. Nothing will bring her back." He looked at the faces around him, seeing his own grief reflected in their eyes. "What we can do is make sure her death meant something. What we can do is build something better from the ashes of what was lost." In the end, the council agreed to try. Not everyone was happy. Not everyone was ready to forgive. But enough people chose hope over hatred. Enough people decided to reach for something new. The first exchange of memories took place on the anniversary of the attack on the orbital stations. Humans and Valkyrie gathered together in a ceremony that was broadcast to both species. They held hands, human fingers intertwined with alien limbs, and they shared. Daniel watched from the audience, his hand resting on a small photograph that he kept in his pocket. Lily smiled up at him from the image, forever 7 years old, forever frozen in time. Amy sat beside him, her shoulder pressed against his. "Sir," she said quietly, "you did something amazing. You changed everything." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I did not change anything. I just carried the truth far enough for people to hear it." He looked at the crowd, at humans crying as they experienced alien lives, at Valkyrie weeping as they felt human love. Two species, so different in body, but learning they were not so different in heart. "The truth was always there," Daniel said. "We just needed someone to be silent long enough to carry it." That night, Daniel walked to the memorial wall where the names of the orbital station victims were carved in stone. He found Lily's name and pressed his palm against the cold surface. "I found my voice again, baby girl," he whispered. "It took a while, but I found it. And I used it to tell them about you. I told the whole galaxy about how much I loved you. Tears ran down his face, but he was smiling. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But it was no longer a weight that crushed him. It was a fire that lit his way forward. Behind him, the stars stretched out into infinity. Somewhere out there, human and Velthari ships were patrolling together, former enemies learning to be allies. Somewhere out there, a new future was being born. And at the center of it all was a simple truth, that love and loss and memory were stronger than any weapon, stronger than any empire, stronger than any war. Humanity had won not by fighting, but by feeling. And the silent commander who had carried their answer to the stars had finally found his voice again. In the end, that was the greatest victory of all.